Welcome to Strong Legends, daily sci-fi stories that fuel your mind. Subscribe and join the legend.
A bruised purple nebula stretched across the void, its tendrils of ionized gas drifting like ghostly ribbons against the backdrop of distant suns. Within this cosmic tapestry, the Xiron Armada glided in grim precision, a formation of 10,000 vessels, each silhouette bristling with weapon emplacements and shield generators. Even at sublight speed, the fleet's passage stirred the nebula, scattering motes of stardust in their wake. It was a display of raw, unrelenting power, an empire grown fat on conquest and subjugation. Admiral Kirathion stood on the command dais of the Nullacron, his translucent wings folded against the ridged plates of his exoskeleton. 100 shimmering, control holoscreens orbited around him, each showing schematics of target worlds, fleet dispersions, and estimated resistance levels. His elongated skull cast a lattice of shadows across his angular face. Beneath the ridges, deep emerald eyes, flicked between diagnostics and strategic overlays. Centuries of battle had carved lines of impatience into those eyes, but today there was something else. A tightness, a hungry anticipation. Pressure waves at 10%, intoned Sub-Admiral Suvtrine, her voice a sibilant whisper carried through the command suite's filtered air. By Xiron physiology, her bones were brittle as chitin, and her wings finer than dragonfly gossamer. As she stepped forward, tendrils of biofiltration mist coalesced around her jawless mouth. Kirathion extended a slender claw to a rotating hologram of the Perseus sector. A chain of blue-lit dots marked human colony worlds, 24 in total, each surrounded by a pale halo indicating provisional defenses, orbital platforms, frigate squadrons, civilian transports rerouted for retrofit. To the Xiron, humans had always been the unruliest of frontier races, aggressive, resilient, and, if rumors were correct, rising ever more belligerent beneath their rudimentary technology. This was to be the Armada's grand test. Probe swarms, Kirathion directed. Send them in. I want a complete survey of their defenses and any sign of resistance. We shall remind them why no species endures the Xiron Armada. Suvtrine tapped a motionless holopad. Across hidden bays in the cruiser's hulls, thousands of microprobes, delicate, faceted constructs no larger than a human fist, sprang to life. They spilled into the void like silvery insects, each carrying nanovirus payloads, encryption breakers, and assorted sensors. Some would jam communication channels, others would seed panic broadcasts urging surrender. Still others would infect civilian infrastructure to disable starports and orbital shields. Kirathion watched as the swarms dispersed into the nebula's violet haze. The probe's flight paths lit the darkness, tracing webs of Xiron geospatial codes. Squadron captains toggled shields to silent mode and snarled war chants through encrypted comm channels. A low hum of confidence rippled through the Armada. This would be another swift conquest. Yet, beyond the coruscating shields of their forward screen, something twisted the sensors into confusion. An anomaly, an eddy of gravitational distortion, laced with electromagnetic noise, hovered where no object should exist. The holomap stuttered as the anomaly flickered, revealing only a vague outline. Colossal, angular, unlike any Xiron design. Admiral, Suvtrine hissed. We're receiving an unknown signature. It's large, larger than a dreadnought. Yet, all our scans merely register interference. No hull composition, no energy patterns we can parse. Kirathion's exoskeletal fingers drummed against the control dais. He leaned into the nearest holoscreen and magnified the target. At first, all that emerged was a blur, a black silhouette fringed with shifting cobalt lines like frost patterns on a dark mirror. He raised a brow of crystalline bone ridges as he toggled through the sensor arrays, infrared, gravimetric, tachyonic. Each mode rendered the vessel inscrutable, as though draped in subspace interference. Focus the long-range optics, he ordered, his voice an echo of cold curiosity. A moment later, the holoscreen brightened. A closer view of the mysterious vessel, almost gargantuan against the emptiness. Its hull was obsidian, polished to a mirror finish, reflecting the nebula's violet glow, but where polished metal would show seams, there were none. Instead, rippling waves of energy skated across its surface, like oil slicks dancing in sunlight. A pair of immense solar sails unfurled from its flanks. Translucent membranes colored in pale blue glyphs shimmered as they absorbed stray nebula emissions. The runes carved into the sails seemed to rearrange themselves, sentient symbols displaying fleeting scrawls of human language in glowing bioluminescent script. HMS Vigilant. The name struck Kirathion like a Navarchal gale. A human warship, he murmured, disbelief coloring his tone. Impossible. Their fleet. They were but scattered cells of hunters and traders. They could not construct a vessel of this magnitude. Below him, officers fumbled over new data. Sensors. We cannot penetrate the hull's field, Lieutenant Uvareth reported, breathless. We detect a quantum phase signature, something shifting between real space and subspace. It's altering our scans. We cannot lock on. Kirathion's wings twitched, the bioluminescent lines along their spines pulsing with anticipation. The Zyron code demanded dominance. To be unsure was to court disgrace. Yet as the Vigilant drifted within range, a subtle tremor of foreboding passed through the Armada. Prepare weapons, came Kirathion's clipped command. Test their shields. Fire a probe volley. Pierce that field. He gestured to Suvtrine. Initiate microprobes with kinetic disruptors. If their field falters, we strike their hull. But as the probes surged forward, the Vigilant responded first. With a silent grace, engines unseen flickered into life. A pale violet glow unfurled. Beneath its hull, twin arcs of plasma energy coalesced into a lance larger than any single Zyron disruptor. Time seemed to slow as the beam unfurled like an eager predator. On the hollow displays, the probes vanished in a shower of sparks, each one reduced to subatomic dust within microseconds. And then, with a roar of trans-dimensional force, the Vigilant's beam struck a cloaked Zyron frigate. The impact was instantaneous. The frigate's hull peeled apart, molten metal vaporizing in a blinding flare that seared the nebula's gas into temporary luminescence. Shields down, Lieutenant Uvareth shouted. Crash to 90%, no failing! Across the Armada, alarms blared. Cadets and veterans alike spun from console to console, scanning, recoiling, unable to comprehend the devastation. A second beam rippled from the Vigilant, this time arcing around smaller skimmers and light frigates, weaving through the formation like a living serpent. Entire wings of Zyron fighters erupted, their engines torn asunder before they could even activate. Kirathion felt the stinging heat of humiliation crawl along his wing spines. He bared a row of crystalline teeth as panic crackled through the comm networks. Pilots screamed for orders, but none could be given. All formations collapsed. Nothing moved in organized fashion. Some vessels spun out of control, inertial couplings, severed by the force of the Vigilant's attack. Others simply drifted, weapons arrays jammed by the human vessel's mysterious field. Hold fire. All units, hold your positions. Kirathion bellowed, but his voice was swallowed by the void. The Zyron fleet had frozen, suspended in a tableau of ruin. Dozens of ships lay buffeted, hulls cracked, engines destitute. Whirling debris flickered like dying stars. Suvtrine sank onto a lowered seat, wings drooping. Admiral, they hold us at bay with some kind of subspace field. The weapons we sent are dissolved instantaneously. Our probes, every single one disintegrates within their barrier. He clenched his claws into fists of frustration. What sorcery is this? How have humans mastered such technology? We are the Armada. Across the void, the Vigilant slipped into stealth, its jet-black hull blending seamlessly with the nebula's swirling shadows. In the final moments before disappearance, Kirathion glimpsed shapes upon its deck. Humanoid figures garbed in sleek cobalt uniforms, staring outward through broad viewports. Their posture was unflinching, unafraid, a race that faced extinction, with cold calculation. As screens of the command dais flickered, Kuthrix, captain of a nearby dreadnought, spoke through trembling comlinks. Admiral, All wings are crippled. We lack propulsion to pursue. Shall we retreat? Every Zyron commander awaited the answer. For an instant, Kirathion's mind was a whirlwind of fury and disbelief. To retreat was to sully the Armada's legacy, anathema to their creed of conquest. Yet to remain was suicide. With effort, he willed his breath steady. Retreat, he said at last, his voice a hollow hiss. Fall back to Regatha's shadow. Regroup. This anomaly will not defy us twice. Suvtrine bowed, her wings collapsing like spent sails. Understood. Admiral, she whispered. Broadcast retreat order. A gust of static cascaded through the network as every vessel powered down weapons and spun away, their battered hulls groaning under strain. Even as the Zyron Armada fled, the nebula danced with shattered fragments, burning wreckage drifting toward oblivion. On the Nulakron's bridge, Kirathion stared at the lingering image of the Vigilant's silhouette, now just a wisp of sensor noise. His claws clenched until his exoskeleton creaked. Never before had the Armada known such a defeat. Never had a single vessel sent them sprawling. Across his mind, a single thought burned. This was no ordinary warship. This was a harbinger of change, the first herald that humanity would no longer be prey at the edge of the void, but a force whose shadow would chill the universe. As the shield generators dimmed and the flagship's engines engaged in retreat, Kirathion swore vengeance. The Zyron would return, he vowed, and when they did, the galaxy would tremble, this time not from fear of their blades, but from terror of the fleet that had frozen the Armada in its tracks. The human warship HMS Vigilant drifted through the iridescent haze of the bruise-purple nebula like a black talon poised to strike. Its hull, a seamless expanse of chronoweave alloy, absorbed stray nebula photons, rendering the vessel almost invisible against the swirling gas clouds. To Zyron scanners, it was a phantom, an object flickering between real space and subspace, impervious to every probe, energy scan, and gravimetric ping sent its way. But on the Vigilant's sleek command deck, nothing about their situation felt ethereal or unreal. Every officer, from the lowest cadet to Captain Arya Solis herself, knew that today would be remembered as the day humanity stepped from the shadows into galactic history. Arya stood at the center of the bridge, her posture rigid, dark hair swept into a tight braid that fell over her shoulder like a ribbon. At 25 standard cycles, she was young for a starship captain, but her record spoke louder than her age. 4 years leading Vanguard Squadron, a flawless record in every engagement, and now this. Before her, shimmering holodisplays projected the Zyron Armada's positions, a monstrous array of 10,000 vessels stretched in a crescent formation across the nebula's heart. Each Zyron ship gleamed with ornate exoskeletal plating, bone-like ribs arching over decks of plasma cannons and quantum disruptors. It was the Armada in its full terrifying glory. Status report, Arya commanded, voice calm yet carrying an undercurrent of steel. Lieutenant Annika Ferrara tapped at her console. HMS Vigilant systems nominal. Chronoweave shielding at maximum. Allocation. Energy reserves? Fully charged. Quantum thrusters holding stability at 2/10 C. Solar sails at standby, ready for energy conversion. Her azure eyes flicked to the sensor grid. Zyron ships are 47,000 kilometers out. Their forward probe swarms have been neutralized. None have returned. The cloak field remains unbreached. Good, Arya said. She turned to her second-in-command, Commander Tarek Jovan, leaning over the tactical holomap. His face, angular and serious, was illuminated by shifting data streams. Tarek, have we identified any concentrations of Zyron capital ships that could pose an immediate threat to our corvette squadrons? He scrolled through layers of information. Their dreadnoughts and battlecruisers are arrayed in the central wedge, roughly 13,000 kilometers ahead. Escort frigates and skimmerwings fan out to protect the flanks. Their formation is tight, designed to maximize coordinated firepower. But their sensor feed is jammed around us. We can't see any openings in their defense matrix. Arya nodded. They think they can surprise us. Let them. Initiate step 1 of the engagement protocol. Emit focused chrono-weave pulses at their proximal grid points. Make them feel our presence without revealing our maximum yield. Jovan's lips curled into a thin smile. Understood. He tapped a sequence on his control panel. Below decks, the Vigilance chrono-weave core pulsed, sending ripples through the fabric of subspace around the ship. On the holo displays, faint distortions flared across sections of the Xyron scanner grid. For a heartbeat, entire squadrons vanished from sight, only to blink back seconds later, confused by the feedback loops. Across the void, the Xyron flagship Nullacron quivered as alarms blared on their command dais. Admiral Curathion, his wings, folding inward, bared crystalline teeth in irritation. "What trickery is this?" he rasped. "Focus more power on their coordinates. Jam their transceivers. Steamroll them with kinetic volleys." Suvitrine's slender form hovered near the hologram. "Our sensors cannot lock on. They phase shift. Every probe we send disintegrates in their wake." She pointed to a series of monitor feeds showing nanosecond bursts of energy shredding probe swarms. "It's as if they exist partly in another dimension." As the Xyron scrambled to respond, the Vigilant held its position. Arya's heart drummed with anticipation. She had trained for this moment for years. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in seamless coordination. Weapons officers monitored turret resonance frequencies. Shield engineers balanced power flow. Drone controllers prepared nanite swarms in stasis pods. All waited for her order. "Tarek," Arya whispered, "prepare the graviton beam array. Once I give the signal, target the lead dreadnought's aft gravitic manifold. We collapse subspace around its engines, forcing a critical failure." He nodded. "Beam array ready. Locking on." Arya inhaled slowly. Every commander on the bridge sensed the weight of it. If this gambit failed, if the Xyron adapted or countered, they would be sitting ducks against 10,000 ships. Yet if it worked, they would shatter the Armada's spine in a single, decisive stroke. "Execute." Her voice was firm. Instantly, the Vigilance aft section telescoped outward. Segmented emitter plates slid into position with a hiss of magnetically charged servos. The graviton beam fired, a slender lance of ultraviolet-hued energy that lanced through the nebula like a dagger. It struck the targeted dreadnought's engines, and reality itself seemed to buckle. On the Xyron's feed, the dreadnought's hull wavered, the engine stuttered, and then a sudden outward explosion shattered its back half. Metallic shrapnel and burning plasma cascaded away, and the dreadnought spun helplessly, its gravitic alignment disrupted. "Dreadnought 1 is down," reported Ferrara. "Battle cruisers scrambling. They're vectoring to flank us." Arya's eyes narrowed. "Solar sails, deploy." She flicked the controls on her chair. Moments later, immense solar sails unfurled from both flanks of the Vigilant, translucent, membranes catching stray nebula photons. Bioluminescent runes along their edges glowed pale blue as the sails absorbed energy, transmitting raw power to the ship's main reactors. In seconds, the ship's energy reserve soared beyond capacity. "Divert all power to the plasma array," Arya ordered. "I want their flank cruisers scorched." Below decks, gunners engaged the phased plasma cannons. The ship groaned as energy, cables glowed white-hot, and then a series of arcs leaped from the barrels. Volley after volley of violet-tipped bolts that carved through the nebula haze. The flanking battle cruisers, caught mid-turn, were shredded before they could raise point defense shields. Hull plating evaporated. Engine blocks detonated in chains of microflares. "Flank cruisers eliminated," Ferrara confirmed. 2. Capital ships retreating to cover. The bridge erupted in subdued cheers. Arya held up a hand and the celebration died quickly. Discipline reasserted itself. They had won real ground, but the Armada still far outnumbered them. This was only Act 1. "Launch the nanite drones," Arya said. "We disrupt their shield matrix before their backup ships can engage." In the Vigilance drone bay, pods cracked open. Thousands of nanite drones, each no larger than a hummingbird, swarmed out, their many-faceted optics gleaming like wet gemstones. They surged outward, slipping through cracks in the Zyron shield weave. Once inside, they latched onto shield projectors, exploding in localized gravity distortions that corroded energy conduits. On holo monitors, shield bars around 3 adjacent cruisers flickered and collapsed. Shield integrity down to 40% on cruisers 5, 6, and 7, reported Ferrara. They're diverting power from weapons to shields. Arya's lips curved into a faint smile. Good. Now open comms. Send this message. This is Captain Arya Solis of the United Earth Fleet vessel HMS Vigilant. Your aggression endangers the balance of this sector. Cease hostilities immediately or face total annihilation. Then lock frequencies. No replies. Tarek raised an eyebrow. No room for negotiation? She shook her head. We cannot show weakness. They must understand we intend to win. Moments later, the brief message blared across every Zyron channel. In the hushed seconds that followed, the Vigilant rotated slowly on its axis, as if surveying the devastation it had wrought. Then it hovered, engines humming softly, awaiting the Armada's response. On the Nullachron, alarms shrieked so loudly that Suvtrine's lobed head rocked as she covered her auditory sensors. Admiral, the human vessel has disabled 3 capital ships and held off our entire flank. Our fighters cannot approach. It's like flying into a vortex of annihilation. She tapped rapidly at her console, trying to reroute sensor grids. They radiate some form of subspace harmonics. Our systems are glitching. Kirathion pressed scaly fingertips to his ridged brow. His emerald eyes blazed with frustration. They have mastered technology beyond our comprehension. Their solar sails, their drones, even their shields surpass anything the Armada has seen. He hesitated. For the first time in his long career, he doubted his own supremacy. All units, disengage and fall back. I want every remaining vessel to withdraw, beyond reach of their weapons. Retreat? But Admiral, Suvtrine's tone betrayed disgust. This is an affront to our doctrine. We should adapt our weapons, push forward. He shook his head. We cannot adapt in time. This one ship, this one vessel, has undone the Armada's might. We risk total annihilation if we linger. With grim resolve, he tapped his console. Broadcast the retreat order. Across the Armada, ships veered away, engines flaring as they attempted to outrun the Vigilant's long-range sensors. Some vessels were already crippled, drifting without power or weapon arrays. Unmanned hulks drifting in the violet haze. Others spun helplessly, severed from command links. Panic rippled through the fleet like a psychic shockwave. The Zyron, pride, that centuries-long conviction of unassailable dominance, fractured in an instant. Back on the Vigilance bridge, Arya watched the Zyron ships scatter on holo displays. She allowed herself a moment to breathe. All units power down offensive systems, switch to defensive posture, keep shields oriented, and maintain chrono-weave pulse scanning. We're not out of danger until they're well beyond sensor range. Aye, Captain, Jovan replied. He crossed his arms, watching the retreat, his jaw clenched. They're falling apart out there. We could press the attack, finish them. Arya met his gaze. No, we've accomplished our objective. The signal has been sent. Now they know that humanity is not to be trifled with, but we must restrain ourselves. If we obliterate the last of their ships, every Zyron survivor will vow vengeance. That cannot stand. We need leverage for the peace negotiations to come. He nodded slowly. Understood. Silence settled over the bridge as the Zyron remnants dwindled to mere points of light, subsumed by the nebula's dark expanse. Only then did Arya allow herself a small nod of satisfaction. Helm, set course for the rendezvous point near Rhea Station. We'll await further orders from Admiral Lee. On the Vigilant's upper observation deck, Arya often found herself drawn to the vast viewport overlooking the hull. She stood there now, alone, watching the final silhouettes of Zyron vessels fade into the nebula's swirling tendrils. Behind her, Commander Jovan approached in silence, standing a step behind. Do you remember the first time you saw a Zyron ship up close? He asked quietly. Arya's gaze remained fixed on the fading flickers. "I do," she replied softly. "I was just a cadet at Helios Academy. We watched holo-records of their victories, stories of worlds falling to their biowarfare, entire colonies glassed. I thought we'd never face them." Jovan exhaled. "But we did." She turned to him, her dark eyes shining. "And today, we proved something. They are not invincible." He met her eyes, a mixture of pride and concern in his gaze. "What comes next?" Arya sighed, running a hand through her braid. "We send our terms of surrender. We prepare to negotiate, or to strike again if they refuse. The galaxy will watch us now. Allies will rally, rivals will tremble. But I fear, this is only the beginning of the true war." Below decks, in the drone control chambers, nanite technicians deactivated the remaining swarms. In the engine rooms, engineers poured coolant into the chrono-weave core. Cycles slowed from combat strain to standby. Across the Vigilant, the crew felt the electric thrill of victory and the caution that followed. They had shattered the Armada's illusion of invincibility. But both sides now knew that tomorrow's battles would be even more deadly. In the depths of the nebula, the last Zyron flagship flickered and vanished from all sensors. The Armada had retreated in disarray, a broken testament to a power once unquestioned. But in the wake of this triumph, Arya felt the weight of responsibility pressing upon her shoulders. The galaxy had changed. Worlds that once cowered beneath the Zyron banner would now look to Earth, some with hope, some with dread. "Captain," Jovan said, his voice soft against the hum of the engines. "You did it. You turned the tide." She closed her eyes for a moment. "We did it. Together. But remember, the Vigilant alone won today's battle. Tomorrow we fight alongside allies. We must become more than a ship. We must become the heart of a unified defense." Jovan nodded, respect gleaming in his eyes. "Then let's chart our course. The stars await." Arya opened her eyes, determination blazing within. She keyed her console. "All hands, log mission status. Objective achieved. Hold course to Rhea Station for debrief and resupply. Prepare to receive diplomatic envoys and reinforcement convoys. Alert United Earth Fleet High Command. Human fleet supremacy has been established in Perseus sector." Across the bridge, her officers bowed their heads in unison. The Vigilant's course slipped toward Rhea Station, leaving behind a nebula stained with the ruins of 10,000 Zyron vessels. As the human warship slipped into hyperspace, its message reverberated across the cosmos. Earth had awakened, and no empire, no matter how vast, could stand before humanity's might. 3 standard days had passed since the HMS Vigilant shattered the spine of the Zyron Armada. Now, countless debris fields, charred hull fragments, drifting plasma ammo pods, and broken gravitic conduits marked the path of their retreat. Most of the surviving Zyron vessels limped in silent formation, their once proud silhouette reduced to ragged specters. Aboard the battered dreadnought Nullacron, Admiral Kirathion stood in the ash-colored hall of the flag bridge. Deep fissures of stress crisscrossed his exoskeleton, the bioluminescent veins in his wings dimming with each pulse. Around him, lieutenants and sub-commanders hovered, their faces etched with disbelief and shame. In centuries of conquest, the Zyron had never endured such humiliation. One solitary warship, human-made, had scattered their armada like starlight through smoke. "Admiral," croaked Sub-Admiral Suvtrine, her voice hollow despite the filtered acoustics. "Sensors confirm that the Vigilance Fleet Command transceiver is active. They are transmitting a general surrender protocol to any surviving Zyron vessels." Kirathion's mandibles trembled. "Surrender?" He paced the length of the dais, his taloned feet clicking against the metallic grating. "Spirits of Regatha, what have we become? To bow before humanity. Once we were gods in this quadrant." Below decks, a contingent of damaged frigates clustered around the Nullacron, their deactivated weapon arrays hanging limply. One by one, command links flickered out as engines failed. Only 33 vessels still maintained minimal sublight capability, The remainder drifted, unmanned, their crews long perished by the Vigilance chrono-weave pulses or plasma lances. At least they do not contest us further, Suvtrine pressed. Continuing this path only invites complete eradication. We must yield. Kirathion's wings snapped open with sudden force as if to carve space around him. Yield? To humans? No. We endure. He turned one final time, meeting Suvtrine's downcast gaze. Summon the Fleet Council. We will not surrender while a single Zyron remains alive to breathe. Suvtrine bowed her cracked head and activated the comlink. As she spoke, the Nolacron's engines shuddered. Its chrono-weave hull fractured in places, subspace leaks rippling across maintenance conduits. Even the flagship's core trembled, the after-effects of the Vigilance graviton strike still echoing through its plating. Meanwhile, on Earth's orbital command station New Olympus, a vast amphitheater of translucent Corton steel and cerulean, obsidian served as the seat of the Interstellar Council. Outside, shuttlecraft from coalition worlds, Hylan, Velshuri, Eingriget Synod, docked at the glittering docks, disembarking ambassadors and military attachés. The recent broadcast from the HMS Vigilant had rippled throughout civilized space. A lone human warship had toppled an armada of 10,000 ships, and now the survivors sought terms. Inside the amphitheater, delegates of a dozen worlds sat in metal and glass seats facing a central dais. At the center of that dais, Ambassador Li Min of United Earth Federation rose, robes rustling like distant tides. He surveyed the assembly, elongated Highland chieftains with obsidian tattoos, the lithe Velshuri whose eyes flickered with prismatic sheen, and the angular synthetic optic combination of the Eingriget envoy. Each had traveled vast parsecs to witness humanity's defining moment. Esteemed delegates, Li began, voice resonant through layered acoustic filters. We meet at a crossroads of history. 3 days ago, the Zyron Armada sought to annex or annihilate humanity's outer colonies. Today, not one Zyron ship remains functional within our contested region. The United Earth Fleet's HMS Vigilant has, through decisive action, shattered their stranglehold on the Perseus sector. Soft murmurs rippled through the audience. From Velshuri Ambassador Kashara, long tendrils of biolight pulsed in approval. Highland Chieftain Urigal's forehead ridge throbbed in contemplative patterns. The Eingrigate's optic clusters rotated slowly, as though computing subtext. Li raised a hand. We offer the Zyron terms of conditional submission. Dismantle their expansion fleets, return raided worlds, and submit to joint oversight of their military reconstruction. In return, we guarantee them sovereignty over their home systems and integration into the Coalition's trade agreements. Should they refuse, the United Earth Fleet will pursue any remaining vessels to the ends of known space, and no world that has felt the sting of their conquest will be spared. The amphitheater fell silent. On the hollow projection behind Li, the battered hull of the Nullicron shimmered in deep space, a testament to the Vigilant's victory. At that moment, the massive doors at the rear of the hall slid open, and Captain Arya Solis entered, accompanied by Commander Tarek Jovan and Admiral Marina Weiss, acting 5th Fleet Commander. All three wore the deep blue and silver trim of the United Earth Fleet. Solis's gaze swept the council floor. Her face, composed yet weary, bore the light of both triumph and burden. Li stepped aside as they approached the dais. Captain Solis, he said, inclining his head. Your presence completes this council. Speak to the lords and dignitaries. Arya offered a brief nod, then advanced to the center podium. Hushed reverence greeted her arrival. Within every allied nation, her name had become legend overnight. She cleared her throat. Honored delegates, she began. What you see behind us is not simply the crumpled hull of a Zyron super-dreadnought. It is the end of an era in which the Zyron Sithrak, once revered as tyrants of gravity and plague, could believe themselves invulnerable. We fought not for glory, but to prevent the subjugation of countless worlds under their yoke. Our victory was not the product of blind arrogance, but of preparation, sacrifice, and unity. She paused. A holographic replay flickered behind her. the Vigilance graviton beam tearing the dreadnought apart, the plasma volleys scorching wing cruisers, and the nanite swarms corroding shields into rubble. Each moment, once observed by Xiron and human alike, now served as irrefutable proof of the new power in human hands. As I speak, the surviving Xiron vessels are in retreat, crippled beyond repair. Admiral Carathion has, to date, refused to yield. Our intelligence suggests internal divisions among their leadership. Some call for immediate surrender, others seek vengeance. We have extended the olive branch, but we prepare for the worst. Should they persist, we will eradicate every last remnant of their war fleet. A faint chorus of assent echoed through the amphitheater. Nods from Hylan, Velshuri, and even the aggregate, Arya continued. Beyond the Xiron threat, there are other challenges. The Malarix Confederacy is watching, uncertain if they should join our new coalition or position themselves as neutrals. The Kashasi clans in the Outer Rim have already signaled a desire to open trade with Earth, contingent on Xiron's defeat. Our choices now will determine not only the fate of the Xiron, but the geopolitical landscape for centuries to come. She stepped back. For a heartbeat, only the hum of the station's life support filled the air. Then aggregate Ambassador AZI-9 stood from their tier, slim fingers tapping a crystalline staff. Captain Solis, your actions have altered the balance of power. The aggregate Synod recognizes your coalition's right to expand its defense perimeter, but we caution that overwhelming force must be tempered by strategic foresight. Do you intend to push into Xiron space or remain on the defensive? Arya met AZI-9's multifaceted gaze. Our intent is clear. We will defend our borders and our allies. If Xiron refuses to surrender and dismantle its war apparatus, we will pursue them to any system they hide in. But I give you my word, we will not be the aggressors. Our ship has proven the price of war. Now we must build a lasting peace. Before AZI-9 could reply, Highland Chieftain Urigal rumbled, Human, you claim mercy yet threaten total eradication. How does the Alliance of Five Worlds trust your Federation? If a single warship can lay waste to 10,000 ships, how many more stand behind you? Arya nodded as if anticipating the question. She tapped her comm pad, and the holodisplay shifted to reveal fleet rosters. The modest line of 9 human capital vessels, supplemented by 4 Highland dreadnoughts, 6 Velshuri carriers, and a pair of aggregate dreadcraft. The combined force was formidable but nowhere near a universal battlefield presence. Balance, she said. The United Earth Fleet alone cannot conquer every corner of the galaxy. We need partners who share a vision of stability. If we press too hard, we risk uniting every other power against us. But if we offer genuine cooperation, we secure allies. I propose a joint task force, a Highland-Vel-Shuri aggregate UEF coalition, to monitor Xiron recovery. Should they rearm, we respond in kind. Until then, we channel resources into reconstruction, humanitarian aid to freed worlds, and rebuilding trust among formerly subjugated species. The chieftains exchanged glances. The tension in the hall eased as ambassadors whispered to their peers. Finally, Kashara, the Velshuri representative, spoke. Your proposal carries wisdom. The Confederacy will commit aid to Terran reconstruction efforts, but we also ask for a codicil. Human vessels will share chrono-weave technology with allied worlds, so we all stand equal against any resurgence of Xiron aggression. Arya paused. Sharing chrono-weave was tantamount to handing them the key to unlock subspace-bending warfare. Yet greater trust required vulnerability. We will grant access to chrono-weave specifications, she said carefully, but under strict oversight and joint safeguards. We cannot allow one power to monopolize such disruptive tech. A murmur of assent rose. The Council reconvened in earnest, drafting the Perseus Accords, a treaty that bound the 5 powers in mutual defense, technological exchange, and coordinated governance over liberated systems. On the HMS Vigilance observation deck, Arya stood at the broad viewport, watching the glow of New Olympus recede as the ship readied for hyperspace jump. Commander Jovan joined her, scent of ozone and recycled air lingering around him. The Accords passed? He asked, voice low. Arya exhaled. By a narrow margin, but they passed. We have a fragile coalition now, threats looming on every frontier, and Kirathion still refuses to capitulate. He's sending cryptic messages. Half of his fleet surrendered. The other half plans a last stand in the astroclism belt. Jovan frowned. So we'll follow them. End this once and for all? She nodded. We must. If the Xiron rebuild in secrecy, they will strike again. Stronger, vindictive, perhaps, weaponizing the very chronoweave tech we introduced. We cannot allow that. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You carry the weight of 1,000 worlds on your shoulders. She glanced at him, lips twitching. I feel it. But I also feel the hope. We've shown the galaxy what we can do. Now, we just have to do it wisely. Beyond the viewport, New Olympus shrank into starlight. The Vigilance engines flared violet-white as the ship slipped into hyperspace. Ahead lay the astroclism belt, a seething supermass of star-crushed matter, gamma-wave storms, and subspace eddies. If Kirathion's loyalists planned to regroup, there it would be a savage crucible. Back in Xiron-controlled space, deep within the deteriorating corridors of the Nullachron, Admiral Kirathion convened his fractured fleet council. The dim light flickered as broken chrono-weave conduits hissed. Around a stumbling holomap, sub-commanders argued in guttural clicks. Admiral, we have two choices, hissed Carthul, captain of the crippled dreadnought Prethag's Bane. We remain in hiding here, scouring the belt for salvage. We rebuild in secret, then strike at the next human outpost. We take no options off the table. A younger commander, Lisivu, shook her translucent wings. We are fools if we linger. We are fewer than 100 ships, barely enough for the wardens of Regatha. The humans and their allies will crush us. Better to surrender now, preserve what remains of our lineage. Kirathion's fractal spines quivered as he listened. Around him, the adults of his species, the warriors of Regatha, argued between ruinous vengeance and survival. His long-memoried mind raced through decades, triumphs, betrayals, the relentless drumbeat of conquest. Now he faced dissolution, AI, fate worse than death to any Xiron. Enough. His voice reverberated through the council chamber. We will do both. Chaos rippled as sub-commanders froze mid-protest. What treachery is this? Lisivu hissed. Kirathion turned his emerald gaze upon her. Some among you will slip to New Olympus under cloak of subspace anomaly rings. We will send envoys to negotiate, to preserve our homeworlds. They still fear our bioware. We will not be annihilated outright. The rest, we will slip into the belt's shadows, salvage what we can, rebuild in secrecy, and wait until the day we can reclaim our honor. A snarl rippled from Carthul. You ask us to divide? Some to beg mercy, some to stew in hiding? Kirathion's wings rose, casting fractured patterns of lamplight across the chamber. I ask only what must be done. The Xiron have no choice. We will not vanish into legend. We will endure in whatever form we can salvage. If we cling to pride alone, we are extinct within the light of a single warship. Silence fell. Even Carthul's mandibles stilled. Kirathion had spoken not as conqueror, but as a survivor. His mind, fractured, reeling but unbroken, saw the path ahead, a precarious balance between submission and subversion. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy adjusted to a new equilibrium. Xiron envoys draped in tatters of once regal cloaks arrived at New Olympus for conditional surrender. Human engineers dismantled Blackfield shields and catalyzed chrono-weave stabilizers under the watchful eyes of Velshuri scientists. Hylan, dreadnoughts escorted the last Xiron warships to decommissioning yards in the outer Rho cluster, where Hull 9 forge factories methodically stripped their exoskeletal plating into raw alloys. At the same time, deep space patrols searched the astroclism, belt for any Xiron stragglers. In one star-crushed valley, the Vigilant herself emerged from hyperspace, her hull marred by dust and micrometeorite scars. Arya Solis, clad in a dark blue exoframe, stood on the observation deck, watching HMS Evergreen and a squadron of Hylan. Interceptors sail past, Tarek, she said, voice echoing softly against the hull's tremors. We found them. Scrolling through tactical feeds, Commander Jovan nodded. 36 Xiron corvettes, 2 frigates, 1 salvage cruiser. They're holed up beneath a corona of neutron star debris. Their signature is faint, but they have active subspace cloaks. Arya took a steadying breath. Keep our approach vector low frequency. We'll phase in just outside their sensor blanket. Then chronoweave pulse graviton collapse. End this. Jovan's jaw clenched. You know, even if we wipe them out, others remain hiding. It's a hydra. She met his gaze. Then we cut off every head we find, one by one, until no Xiron arm extends into the light. Below, the Hammerschmidt-class interceptors hummed against the belt's gamma storms. At Arya's signal, they cut in, weapons hot. Plasma volleys carved through drift ice and subspace eddies. The Xiron corvettes, caught between spiking neutron, waves and human beam fire, could not muster coherent defense. Their ships erupted in superheated bursts, sending star shards scattering. By midday standard time, the belt was a tomb of jagged wreckage. No Xiron signaled for ceasefire. Their allegiance to vengeance had become ultimate folly. The HMS Vigilant glided through the debris field one last time, its hull shimmering with chronoweave coatings that flickered like the memory of starfire. Behind it trailed Kashara's Velshuri independent survey vessel, mapping salvage sites with bioprinted drones, and AZI-9's AI aggregate dreadcraft, scanning for hidden stasis pods or cryocrypts. Arya considered the wreckage. On holomaps, she saw the skeletal arcs of once proud cruisers now piled like broken bones. Some held frozen corpses, others held only puzzles of bent plating. In that morass, she glimpsed not triumph, but sorrow. They had won. But at what cost? The Xiron grace of battle, once a brutal symphony, had been silenced. A civilization that stood for ages would now endure only in fragments, whispers, and secret enclaves. Had they sanctioned genocide, or simply eradication of a martial threat? The question haunted every starlit corridor in that field. On the bridge of the Vigilant, Jovan spoke quietly. You did what was necessary, Arya. She stared at the flickering debris outside. Victory tastes cold when there's nothing noble in it. But I won't let their legacy become a cautionary tale. I want these ships' logs, these data cores, every record of Xiron history. We will preserve their culture, their art, their memories. Even as we dismantle their war machines, we remember them as more than our enemies. Jovan nodded, respect shining in his dark eyes. So we become both executioners and archivists. A solemn silence settled. Then Arya keyed her compad. All ships cease fire, secure the field. Dispatch salvage and archival teams. We will recover every scrap of knowledge. Across the belt, human and allied vessels organized salvage flotillas. Velshuri biologists prepared to reconstruct Xiron biodata that survived the plasma blasts. Highland engineers towed wrecks back to Coldforge asteroids for milling. AI aggregate archivists decrypted holorecords and star caches. Humanity would learn not only from its victory, but from its vanquished foe. In the depths of a shattered asteroidal hulk, Admiral Carathion watched the evacuation of Xiron civilians bound for Highland hospice ships. His once majestic wings lay torn, stumps of exposed nerves sparking beneath delicate dermal membranes. Around him, his bodyguards carried the last of the Xiron magna crystals, memory repositories containing cultural histories, genetic lineages, and sacred war chants. Carathion placed a frail claw against a curved memory crystal. So ends the Armada, he whispered. The crystal's holographic threads spooled like fractal filaments, painting images of Carathion's earliest memories, training fields lit by bioluminescent dusk, his induction into the Order of Red Claws, his first command at Regatha's shadow. Time itself wavered in those images, as if reciting a litany of glory now gone. He traced one fractal thread leading to the memory of his mother, Chirla, a warrior priest who had taught him that conquest was destiny. Now Carathion felt the weight of her disappointment more keenly than any Xiron blade. My child, her recorded voice intoned, the Xiron stand eternal in honor, even if their ships burn to ashes. The crystalline voice echoed like a whisper across eons. Karathion's mandibles quivered. Honor, a hollow promise without purpose. He lifted the crystal to his bioluminescent eyes, the fractals dancing across his vision. Humanity will archive us, our art, our wars, our faith. They will study our rise and fall. And in that reflection they will see what we once were. He turned, wincing as a latent chrono weave leak in his bones pulsed pain through his nerves. Lysivu, he rasped to the young commander at his side. Ensure these crystals accompany us to our sanctuary. We will rebuild, piece by broken piece, until we can stand among the stars once more. Lysivu bowed. As you command, Admiral. Kirathion cast one final glance at the ruined field beyond the cave's mouth. The skeletons of dreadnoughts, the frayed arcs of graviton cables, the silent graves of once proud crews. In that ruin, he found a spark of something he thought dead. Resolve. The Zyron code had been broken, but not the Zyron spirit. His wings trembled as he let the crystal drop into its containment pouch. The other bodyguards, scarred by plasma burns, strode past, escorting him into a stasis gondola bound for the astroclism's hidden depths. Kirathion exhaled a brittle sorrow. Let them remember us. Let them know the price of hubris. For, though the Armada has fallen, the Zyron name will endure. In the corridors of New Olympus, the Perseus Accords were ratified amidst cautious optimism. Freed worlds began reconstruction, verdant fields on the former Zyron mining colony Sethrima, prime, shattered cities repopulated by escaped slaves, and the rebuilding of orbital habitats once used as quarantine zones. Humanity, once scrappy settlers on the fringe, became the beacon around which a new coalition coalesced. Back on Earth, in the museum built to commemorate the victory, Aria Solis stood before a massive hollow immersion display. It projected the Aurora of Nebula XG9, the site of their first engagement swirling in violet haze over shattered dreadnought skeletons. Tourists, scholars, and veterans alike gazed through plasteel windows, each drawn to the chronicles of that fateful day. A young Highland engineer approached her. Captain, they say you flew through the debris field to rescue our mining scouts. Thank you for saving 10,000 lives. Arya placed a hand on a biometric scanner that subtly recorded the ambient patterns of her crest. We fight not only for victory, but for those who cannot fight. History will remember the Vigilance triumph, but I hope they remember the sacrifices too. The engineers who risked their lives to keep our chrono-weave core stable, the drone pilots who guided nanites through enemy shields, and my crew, who followed me into the heart of their armada. On the far side of the hall, Admiral Li Min inspected an exhibit devoted to the Perseus Accords, banners bearing 5 interlaced crescents, each representing a founding member. Below, a data slate replayed negotiation transcripts between human, Hylan, and Velshuri envoys. Li watched, satisfaction awakening in his chest. The galaxy had teetered on the brink of Zyron subjugation, and now that threat was unmade. He tapped a note into his comsphere. Prepare a keynote address for Earth's centennial celebration of the Vigilance victory. We will commemorate the day humanity claimed its place among galactic powers. He paused, recalling the Zyron surrender envoys he had met. Solemn, warriors who still bore the weight of loss. And we will remember the cost, for memory is duty. As dawn broke over New Olympus, turning its cerulean towers to rose-gold metal, the United Earth Fleet under Captain Aria Solis slipped into hyperspace once more, this time bound for the Outer Row Cluster, where salvage operations and treaty enforcement continued. The Vigilance hull, scorched from battle and patched with newly forged chronoweave plating, glimmered under starlight. In her ready room, Solis reviewed the latest reports. Nearly 70% of former Zyron-held worlds now sought membership. In the coalition, the Kashasi clans had opened 2 new trade routes, and the Milarix Confederacy, once hesitant, pledged a watchful neutrality. Yet beneath the optimism, she sensed tremors. Pockets of Zyron loyalists at large, fringe cults worshipping the image of Kirathion's final stand, and whispers of biowarfare experiments in hidden chambers. Her comsphere pinged. A coded message from the Astroclism Belt Command. All clear. No residual Zyran warbands detected. Godspeed. Arya exhaled. Then our path is clear. She rose, stepping into the corridor. Commander Jovan awaited, her datapad in hand. Preliminary recovery is complete. We've forwarded Zyron cultural archives to allied scholars. Highland historians are reconstructing their language. Vel Shuri biologists deciphering their genome. Arya nodded. And chronoweave tech? Her tone was crisp, he met her gaze. Locked behind multi-party encryption. Allies and UEF R&D will determine access. No one faction unilaterally. Safeguards in place. A faint smile touched her lips. Very good. Together they descended to the command deck. The Vigilance bridge bustled. Engineers monitoring chronoweave stability. Communications officers liaising with Highland Dreadnought HSS Calrec for upcoming patrols. And fleet logistics specialists coordinating supplies for the dozens of allied vessels shadowing them. In the captain's chair, Arya placed her hands on the console. She felt the hum of the core beneath her feet, a living resonance of power that had rewritten history. The galaxy's tapestry had shifted. No longer would humanity cower on frontier worlds. Now, they stood at its center. Yet, as the Vigilance crystallized eyes, its sensors turned toward the outer row conflict zone. Arya knew the war might be over, but the peace would be far more treacherous. Old wounds took time to heal. New alliances required constant vigilance, and the Zyron, though broken, remained a flicker in the cosmic dark, waiting for the moment to rise again. She keyed in the jump coordinates. Engage hyperspace. The two violet plasma ribbons danced along the Vigilance hull as it accelerated. For a final moment, Arya allowed herself to glance at the receding star lines, trails of light racing toward infinity. A single thought riveted her mind. We have shaped the next age. Now we must guard it. As the fabric of space folded, the Vigilant vanished into the corridor between worlds, its chronoweave hull leaving only a whisper in the void, and a promise that humanity's watch would never end.